shifting focus a little bit to Ukraine, there's a country that went through several revolutions. It seems like it's almost on the verge of a new revolution every day, and yet it is seemingly trying to move forward to become part of Europe, but it also kind of moved off the front headlines because it seems like maybe the conflict in the eastern Ukraine has been frozen, whatever that means, but I guess it's low-grade warfare. Do you feel that Ukraine is actually making steps forward and is going to be able to get out of being like a junior Russia, or is it just continually falling back because that's just the way Ukraine is? Not to mention Russia, of course, continuing to mess with things in Ukraine.
Frankly, I have been disappointed by the pace of Ukraine's progress along the path of reforms. Ukraine was in a unique situation 2 years ago, a year and a half ago, when the so-called Euromaidan revolution brought about a huge change in Ukraine, and a new political mandate was given to a democratically elected parliament, which is called Rada, and the same uniform political mandate was given to the newly elected president. They had this mandate strong and powerful in the early days and months when they were elected. And I thought that it was a unique opportunity to do things fast, because any type of fast-track reforms require not only action, but also some degree of serious pain to everybody. And this has not been done. And their pace of reform was a subpar by any measurement, including a fight with corruption, so-called lustration, and economic liberalization, financial stability, and so on and so forth. Obviously, the Russian aggression has not helped, but you cannot excuse this kind of pace of reform by bringing only the excuse of the Russian aggression. There are so many things that Ukraine could have done but did not do, which has nothing to do with the Russian aggression. You can only explain this by taking as for granted a statement that a Ukrainian elite has not been ready, was not ready at the time of the revolution, and is still not ready now for the path of reforms moving Ukraine from the Russian feudal orbit into the European Union. The Ukrainian elite was not ready for that. However, Putin and Russia pushed Ukraine into that direction. So whether Ukrainian elite wanted it or did not want it, it doesn't really matter. But Putin unexpectedly and not knowing it himself, he pushed Ukraine into that direction towards the EU and towards these reforms. So it is not that Ukraine was directly going into that path. It is actually got onto these rails which Russia put Ukraine on, and Putin and his thugs, and that's what in fact happened in Ukraine. And I believe this process is by now is unstoppable, and it cannot be reversed. I believe that the critical mass has been gained in Ukraine, and it will never go back into the Russian orbit ever again. And obviously, I only can hope for that the pace of a Ukrainian movement into this direction can only be somehow expedited, but I believe that Ukrainian cause, in the context of how Putin understands it, it is forever lost. And whatever happens in Ukraine is extremely important for Russia, because any type of Ukrainian success, maybe not as fast as somebody could hope for, but at least a clear path to this success will be the showcase for the Russian population at large, showing that a revolution which does away with a corrupt and criminal government can lead not only to a financial collapse, not only to economic meltdown, not only to fires and burning automobile tires and shots in the streets of capital and other big cities, but it can also lead to a normal, prosperous life on the path to prosperity and building capitalism. That, in fact, brought many hundreds of millions of people out of poverty into middle-class status worldwide over the last 30 years. This happened in Eastern Europe. This happened in some other countries around the world. There is no reason that it cannot happen in Ukraine. In fact, there is no reason that it cannot happen in Russia. So Ukraine, in that respect, would be a good example for some parts of the Russian population to watch and take example from.
Slava, just one more question about Ukraine. There's been a lot of expatriates from Ukraine who have chosen to come back and work there, and you have talked about them on your Facebook blog, and some of them have stayed, some of them have left, and there's obviously drama, in every sense. But do you feel that how important are individuals to the success of this Ukrainian experiment? In a sense, in terms of that, there is Mikhail Saakashvili in Odessa, but and that's very, very interesting example. But there's other people that have come that have Harvard education that are now working in Ukraine. Some of them haven't been able to fit in. How lethal is that for Ukrainian experiment to have the right people there right now? Or is it going to be okay anyway because they're just not going to be like Russia ever again, and they'll just figure it out somehow, sometime?
No. I mean, what is called human capital is the most valuable capital that you can have, and obviously, financial capital and the opening of international capital markets to Ukraine and vice versa is extremely important. But the most important, of course, is human capital. And in about 10 years from now, we will have more people coming back to Ukraine from the West with Harvard-type degrees, and not only Harvard. I never studied at Harvard. I studied at New York University. There will be lots of people from all around the U.S. and Europe and other top universities around the world coming back to Ukraine, who are originally from Ukraine, with expertise not only perhaps in Western education, but also with experience and expertise working in Western companies after they got their education. This is what happened in Russia from the mid-90s through maybe 2007 for over 10 years, for 12 years. This is exactly what was happening in Russia on a very large scale. And I was one of those people who came back to Russia back in 1996. But now anybody, any single person who can come to Ukraine of the stature of these kind of people who got education in these kind of universities and have, especially who have work experience in the West after their education, they are needed in Ukraine today. And it is up to Ukraine to make this path a very attractive one for them. I would, in fact, if I were in the Ukrainian government, I would even institute a somewhat favorable tax regime for personal income taxes for anybody, for any expatriates of Ukrainian origin who are from Ukraine originally, for them to come to Ukraine, maybe with zero income tax for the next 5 years, and with only gradual increase to normal rates within next 5 years after the first 5 years, with these kind of incentives for them to come back. This is how you gain traction with addition of a valuable human capital that is most really in need at the moment.
You're listening to Rashkin Report.